Hello. Great to see you, beautiful being. There's a tui singing in the tree. So I'm just going to stand here and hope that it keeps singing because it's beautiful. Here you go. In fact, you can hear them all around. And yes, there's an aeroplane. I'll turn the volume up because it'll make me louder, but it'll make the birds louder too. Let's just listen for a bit and I'll show you the sky. Well, it would help if my hand wasn't in front of the lens, wouldn't it? So this is the day. And there's the aeroplane. Being noisy. But it is beautiful. And it's nearly spring. And you can see the cherry tree is, well, there are going to be buds. It's still looking asleep right now. But down in the garden, there are flowers. And in case you wonder why I'm standing here outside showing you flowers when I've blithered on about talking about why love is blind, I'm doing that because this is a Facebook Live and it has to propagate out onto the internet before I really get into it, because people like to join me live sometimes and they can't do that, if I don't give them an opportunity to do it. So this is the purple cineraria that's beat all the rest of them into flower. You can see this one's coming. And, spring is happening here. And by the way, in case you wonder, my name is Oneness Evolving. And I'll turn this around again. The garden's much prettier than me. And look, we've got a big fern in the back. It's such a beautiful day. It's gorgeous. And look, the magnolia. Can you see? Oh, there we go. This is better. We have a flower. The first magnolia flower. See, the camera gets confused. First magnolia flowers coming out. The camera still gets confused. Better stop that. Anyway, you've got to look at it. So it's just beautiful out here. And with the birds and the blue sky. And this is all going to explode into flowers soon. But I will show you the freesias. Hello, this is me. The freesias are really doing pretty well. There's yellow ones and there's white ones. Oh, look, we've got a little bee in there. You can't see it, but wait, it'll come out. Here it is. I love watching the bees at work. You can hear the birds. It's so still that they echo. There's another bee. There's two. Bees used to be just taken for granted, and then we got the varroa mite here, and suddenly they're not. So we have lots of freesias. The freesias just come out, and they're quite a display. So happy to share them with you. It's beautiful here today. And look, all the lilies are coming up, and the autumn crocus. I'll get my shadow out of the way. And the new calendula plants. You can eat those flowers. So I grow the plants for the flowers, and they look lovely in the garden, and then I pick them and my husband eats them. There's more things coming up. Gladiolus. And look, the muscari. You can start to see that they've been planted in a spiral. The whole thing is a spiral shape. And so there's flowers out here. And more spirals. Surprise, surprise. I really like these sedum cacti. Well, they're succulents, not really cacti. But I really enjoy them. Okay. March inside now. And talk about what I've been writing today for God of me. And I went and looked and thought, well, what else do I need to write about? What is the next thing? And I know I talked about that last week. And I came to the conclusion that there was another gap that I needed to plug. Excuse me, I'll just take this off. Come inside where it's quiet. So this gap that I need to plug, and I've talked about it, but I haven't actually given it a name. This gap that I am plugging, and I will have to write about it again next week because I made a good start. Excuse me, this phone just isn't quite where it needs to be. Slight adjustment there. I started the writing, but it was quite difficult to get it right this week. I'm a bit tired, which, always that happens sometimes. And it just makes it a little bit harder, and I just couldn't. It took me a while to get my mind around the concepts and the ideas and how I wanted to say them, because you look up the information and you figure stuff out and you think I know what this is, and you start to write, and then you think, no, I don't know what this is, and then I get more information and I think, oh, okay. So I start to unpack it, and it's always a bit messy, and with a tired brain that's a little bit harder than usual. So that was what I did this morning. I kind of wrestled with it. Excuse me. But I still have notes, and I still have things that I can tell you. And you see, when I started working on this thing of refractory period, what the hell is a refractory period anyway when it's at home? A refractory period, actually, when I Googled refractory period, that's about muscles and nerves. And about, if a nerve fires, there is actually a period of time after the nerve is fired when it can't fire again. It's got to kind of recharge. It's got to reset. And that is a refractory period. And I thought, but hang on a moment. I'm talking about emotions. So then I know, for example, that if a child has a tantrum, there's no point talking to them while they're having a tantrum. They're having a tantrum. And I know from what I've learned from Dr. Joe Dispenza that while that child is in a tantrum, they are in a refractory period, an emotional refractory period, which is the point that I'm getting to, not just a refractory period, an emotional refractory period. And you can't talk to a child while they're screaming in a tantrum, just like if you've just had a fight with your spouse or your best friend or whatever. You don't want anyone to talk to you. Hi, Amber, lovely to see you. You're not in the mood. I mean, you're just, right? If you've just escaped from a lion, you're in an emotional refractory period. You can't solve math at that time. It's just not what's going to happen. So I knew that that's an emotional refractory period, and I know that you need to get out of that refractory period if you're going to function more effectively. But what I had forgotten about is that, when we are in an emotional refractory period, it happens because something has been a really strong stimulus in our environment. There's been trauma, you've seen someone that you hate, or that you love, by the way. You can be so overwhelmed with a positive emotion that you lose your mind. And this is the thing, love is blind. Because when you're in an emotional refractory period, the thinking brain turns off. That's the first thing that happens. The second thing that happens is that there is really strong emotion, and it can be negative or it can be positive. But there's really strong emotion, but there's no thinking brain. So, you're just juiced up on a whole lot of emotional chemistry, and you got no brain. It's kind of a recipe for disaster. It's a little bit like teenagers, they can be impulsive. It's because there's a lot of chemistry going on and they have strong emotions and the brain is still developing. It's different, but drawing analogies and connections. But the third thing that happens, which I'd forgotten about with an emotional refractory period, is that because the thinking part of your brain is shut down and you're full of the chemistry of an emotion, it puts a pair of goggles over your eyes and your ears and all the information that's coming into your nervous system, as in eyes, ears, nose, taste, touch, and the other senses that, we think of 5 senses. There's actually more sensory receptors in our nervous system than just those 5. But to keep it simple, all of the information that's coming in, it gets filtered through that strong emotion. So, and the example that I wrote about, because I finally thought I can use this both ways, and this is why I said love is blind, because if you've ever been in the honeymoon period of a relationship with someone, it's like, oh my God, they're amazing, I love them, this is so perfect. Or you've seen someone else have that experience, right? And they're totally in love, and that person can do no wrong. And you can be watching the person who's in love and the person that they love, and you can see the person that they love doing dumb things all over the place, but that person is in an emotional refractory period of being completely in love and overwhelmed by it, and they don't see it. They can't see it because they're just in an emotional refractory period, the honeymoon period. It's well known. And you may also have seen, even that same person, you may have seen them fall out of love with the person that they were so in love with before. Maybe, something happens and the relationship goes sour, because, that can. And they look at that person, and now all they can see is that person's faults. Suddenly they hate them because they're in a different emotional refractory period of being, oh my God, how could I have ever thought and felt that about that person? I can't stand them now. And now all they're seeing is the bad things of that person. And you're watching all of this go on and thinking, well, they're neither that good or that bad. They're somewhere in the middle. They're all of these things. But you watch the person swing from one extreme to the other because their perception is altered by their strong emotions. And that is the same thing that can, somebody who is normally considerate and kind and thoughtful can be in a very strong, like in a survival situation. It's a common situation, thing that would happen. If someone is in a very strong survival situation, they're completely overtaken by the emotions, by the need to survive. And that person will climb over others and push them out of the way and do anything to survive. And they would never normally do that. If they could keep their mind, if they could not lose their mind to an emotional refractory period, well, they would behave differently, even in the same survival situation, if they didn't lose their mind. But because they've lost their mind, they've lost their mind. So when we get very strongly into any emotion, it alters us. It alters the way we perceive everything and everyone and ourselves. It's like the talented person that they're really talented and they're amazing, and all they can see is how useless I am and how much I've failed and what I can't do, and that they make a small mistake and it becomes enormous because they have this, and it's an emotional refractory period. And the thing about emotional refractory periods is that when a child has a 2-year-old tantrum, there's something that triggers them off. Mum or dad says no or whatever. They do their thing. They throw their purple fit. And then it winds down. It comes to an end. They come out of it. And, if you've had some good skills in parenting, or you've watched a really skilled parent, they distract the child, or they give them something else to do, or they divert them. They help them break themselves out of that tantrum state so they can function again. They get their brain back. They can smile. They can carry on. And that's what's supposed to happen. And an example that I wrote about a long time ago, because this is what happens as we get stuck in our emotional refractory periods, is our cave woman Amma, who went to the river to get water and had an experience where there was a big cat that had moved into the area, and it was like a saber-toothed tiger or something, and it pounced out of the bushes and nearly caught her. It didn't. She survived, but she ran away. She survived, but because we humans have these big brains and we have this ability to remember the stuff that happens to us, or that somebody did to us, or that we love someone, or that we hate someone, or, whatever, we can keep it going. And so instead of being like the 2-year-old where we just have the tantrum and then we come down out of it and, we get something else and we go and do something else and that's dandy, we stay there. And we stay there with our altered, distorted, completely incorrect perceptions of everybody and everything in our world, including and especially ourselves. And that's why there are some people you just can't tell them. You can't tell them what's going on because it's like throwing water at a stone wall. It just bounces off. No, this is the truth. So, what have I covered in my little notes? No thinking brain, strong emotions, filters on perception, love is blind. There was another example that I made because I try to illustrate things in ways that anybody all around the world who has a smartphone, because that's where all this information is eventually going to be made available, could understand. And I was thinking, okay, most people can relate to somebody falling in love and falling out of love. Most people can relate to having an argument with your best friend or your partner or your spouse. If you've just finished having a real yelling match with somebody, can somebody talk to you? Can they reason with you? Can they tell you, hey, that was really out of line? No. Even if they're completely right about that, you're still going, ah! You're still a caveman, pounding the walls with a club inside your head. And you can't see yourself or anybody else the way they are, because you're just mad. And the thing is, we can get stuck in this. So going back to my story of the cave woman who had that experience and survived, but then she couldn't stop thinking about it. And every time we think, we make a chemical, and that chemical gives our body a feeling that matches the thought we just had. And so if she kept on thinking and thinking and thinking about that traumatic experience, she actually kept the emotional refractory period going, because the emotions are chemicals. You have a thought, you have an experience, you're going to get a feeling in your body, and that feeling happens because there's a chemical in your brain that sets off a chain reaction that gives you a feeling in your body. And if you keep on the thinking and the feeling and the experiencing, your body's going to keep on having that same thing, and you just get stuck in it. And so you get stuck in this situation where you're perceiving everybody and everything and including yourself completely inaccurately, because you're seeing it through the filter of that emotion that you're just stuck in. And I mean, it's something to realize that we can be completely wrong, and we're so sure that we're right because we are just stuck in those survival emotions. When you're stuck in survival emotions, your thinking brain turns off. And that's also the reason why people, normally a nice, considerate, caring person, they can lose their mind and do things that they massively regret later because they're in an emotional refractory period. We're altered, we're changed, we're different. And so that might help you to understand yourself a little bit better, and also why somebody else might completely lose their mind and behave not like you expect them to and be very hurtful. And then they are in their refractory period, and then you're in yours, and you keep going, and both of your perceptions are really altered until you do something to get out of that, which is the point. And, there's a bit of me which is thinking, I've got to stop writing about the problem, start writing about the solution. But that's quite a challenging apple for me to bite into, because I've got to find my own approach to explain my ways of the solution. And some of it really is my ways, and some of it is the ways that I've learned from other people. And so there's a little bit of it's not a mental block. It's sort of like, it really is, how do I start talking about this? But that's why I'm going through and looking for gaps and things that I want to explain about the problem before I start thinking, oh shit, I really have to talk about the solution now. So it is a little bit of a challenge, but these weird little things, I've talked a lot about how we can get stuck in the thinking and feeling loop. You have a thought, you make the chemical, you have the feeling. And the thing that we forget is that when we have a feeling, our brain notices, and our body is actually capable of sending a feeling up on its own. And then the brain goes, oh, I noticed that feeling. Let me think a thought that goes with that feeling. Hunger is a good example of that. We can be really busy doing something, totally engrossed. And then suddenly your stomach grumbles and you think, oh shit, I'm hungry. You weren't hungry a minute ago. But your body is sending a signal, chemical or otherwise, hey, we need to eat. So there's a communication loop that goes both ways. And again, I've been talking about that, homeostasis last week. Now, last week it was cleaning up and finishing explaining homeostasis and how we are our most common thoughts and feelings and behaviours. We really are. And if we get stuck in those, the thoughts, the feelings, the behaviours, they change our chemistry, they change our neurology, they change our genetics and how our body functions. That's how people make themselves sick. All well by thinking and feeling. Because that's epigenetics, by the way, and that's a big word that I've decided not really to talk about. But epigenetics is a science that was first discovered by this really cool guy called Dr. Bruce Lipton, but there's a lot of research being done in it for a long time now, where, he did this experiment, it was like 50 years ago or more, where you take stem cells and you put them in petri dishes, a culture medium, and then you give the stem cells different kinds of food. And they're all the same stem cells, but you give them different kinds of foods and they turn into different kinds of cells, muscle, nerve, pancreas, whatever. Depending on the environment, depending upon the stimulus that the cell receives in its environment. Well, our thoughts create the chemicals that hit our cells every second of our life. And so we are epigenetic masters every second of our life, whether we know it or not. And if you get stuck in an emotional refractory period, that's a strong emotion. That's a very strong signal that you are sending to your body saying, express these genes, work like this, be the body of anger, be the body of fear, be the body of depression, be the body of victimization, be the body of joy, be the body of life, be the body of light. It doesn't matter. Whatever we think, feel, behave, and do and are, the most often, literally is translated into our physical body and our life at large. That's the other piece that I want to explain. How the hell do I do that? Because it's all about the fact that we do manifest stuff. But I don't really just want to say, you think and you manifest. How does that work? I want to explain that. And I have some clues. But I've got to start putting the pieces together. So it's going to get quite jumbly. I think it's going to get messy and quite jumbled. And it'll be an interesting journey for me to start putting this together. But how do we actually manifest our lives? I've talked about how we manifest our bodies and why change is so hard. But what do we do? How does it work that we actually manifest our lives around us, not just the bodies we live in? So I think that's my next challenge. I'm pretty much out of stuff to rabbit on about today because I had a bit of a short session. Like I said, I'm a bit tired. There were some disruptions this morning, but I still got some writing done. I still got another piece done. I know I've got to finish it off next week because it's not smooth yet, but I'm looking forward to biting into the next big apple and sharing that journey with you. So thank you so much for joining me here on Facebook. Thank you for listening on YouTube. I do appreciate you very much. I send you lots of love. I invite you to check me out on Patreon. There are blessings and goodies for following me for free. Or if you want to support my journey with a $5 US a month, that'd be awesome. There are bonuses for you too. So I look forward to that. And until next week, big love.